Okay, so yes, as always, this call is recorded and will be uploaded to the internets. Let's get started since we're already a few minutes late. Can anyone scribe? Okay, Elliot.
I'll scribe. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I mean,
Thanks.
I offer to do the service. Before you prefer real-time scribe.
I'll take high-level notes, and then we will definitely try the video.
Okay.
For the
Sounds
detailed
good.
ones.
Perfect.
Cool. And with regard to the next call, so it was originally scheduled for November 14th, where I know many people won't be able to join. Will November 19th work? That's a Tuesday, the week afterwards.
What time would we aim for? 10, 11?
For me, 10 or 11 would work.
And this is PST.
Yeah, PST.
Okay.
Ryosuke, I believe others. What's the
18th? Monday?
19th.
19th. 11?
Yeah. So Tuesday, either 10 or 11, both work for me.
11 would work for me.
Okay. So cool. We'll do that.
Any objections from anyone for that time? Just looking through the list. Nope. Okay. Great.
Okay.
So November 19th at 11.
Yeah, and otherwise, let's start going through the list. So we have idle callback order. An issue 82 on request idle callback that Ryosuke opened about a month ago. Ryosuke, do you want to go over what that issue is about?
Sure. So the issue is really that the order across the windows are not so the idle callback requested in a different windows won't order correctly. That's the
and we're talking about windows that share an event loop, I'm guessing.
I'm sorry, what?
Windows that share an event loop, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, when they share, I guess, a window of similar window origin agent. I think this is valid. This is probably a spec bug just from us moving from more of an event loop model to hooking onto the window object and not realizing that there could be multiple window objects communicating. I have a PR up which should address it. It basically hooks it onto the same window origin, the same window origin agent, or similar agent, sorry. Did you have a chance to have a look at that, Ryosuke?
Yes.
Let me try and find it.
Yeah. What I don't understand is why is it different from like a mutation observer case?
I'm not sure. What do you mean?
Q queue microtask. So like in HTML5 spec, right? Each event loop has a microtask queue.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't each event loop have list of idle callbacks? Why use different definition?
So you mean modify event loop to have an idle task queue as well as a microtask queue and a task queue, and use that?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what the PR does. I originally had it with event loop instead of similar origin window agents, but Anne suggested that we should make it similar window agents, which kind of makes sense because you shouldn't be able to observe the difference from the web at least, and it would give a bit more flexibility to the user agent.
Well, I mean, he probably suggested that because you're doing it in a request idle callback spec. What I'm suggesting is that I think we should just modify WebPerfWG to spec to have that defined WebPerfWG is in a spec.
Sure.
And just use that concept.
Certainly, yeah, we could certainly put the two queues on there, and then we could still hook back into the start and idle algorithm.
Yeah, I mean, having said that, though, I think the PR will probably work. I think one thing I don't understand still is that like in the PR it still refers to push the callback to the end of agents list of like it. That makes less sense though, right? Like here you're talking about the like now the list of the idle callbacks is no longer associated with each agent per se. It's associated with the similar origin window agents, right? Like it. So like something's not right here. Either you have to say that list of idle callback is associated with each agent, and then all similar origin user agents share a single list, right? Like right now, the concept of list of idle callback is associated with the concept of like set of similar origin window agents, not that like with each user agent, right? So like then defaulting to like add it to the end of like list of the user agent doesn't seem right because there you're talking about the specific user agent. So I think the better way to perhaps say is to like there is a list per agent, but then that list is shared across all similar origin user agents. Something like that.
Okay. I thought there was a single concept of a similar origin window agent. I didn't realize that was a list or a group of agents.
Yeah, I mean, because it's right. I mean, I think also like because what that means is a similar origin window agent, right? Like what is that similar to? I mean,
I thought that was a concept, similar origin window agent. We've been using it in some thinking about how we structure Blink. I hadn't.
Well, the similar origin window agents is a concept.
Agents, plural, like
right,
the
and
group
you
of
can
all similar.
create a similar origin window agent, right?
Yeah.
Like you can create new agent that is similar origin to something.
Yeah.
But you can't like
it's not
refer
one
to a specific user agent as a specific agent as the similar origin agent, because like window agent, because that raises like it doesn't define what is that similar to. So I think what we have to say here is that the like conceptually, like when you're adding object and you're coming from some sort of context object, right? What is going on here?
Could you maybe add this to the comment that Anne suggested, and maybe?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I will do that offline. Sure.
Because that seems reasonable. If that's a better way of defining it, that seems easy enough to do. But I'd just like to make sure that Anne is involved.
So let me try to see if I got anything from that conversation. So we're going to PR HTML with the concept of the idle task, like the idle task queue, and then try to hook up based on that, or
I think that probably works. Assuming that we have a list of agents in the event loop that we can hook up onto somehow, which I think we should have, given the previous conversation with Dominic.
okay, cool. So one of you will sum that up on the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can comment on with your concern, and then I'll reply.
Yeah, although the HTML5 spec use it like that too, so maybe it's okay. Like it's weird. It's a very weird thing that they're doing, but
Does say user agents may share event loop across similar origin window agents, which suggests it's a thing, like it's a thing rather than a grouping of agents. Either way, I think we can try and PR the HTML5 spec to add the queue, the lists there.
Yeah.
Because it makes more sense than monkey patching it in the spec, which was kind of
right.
what I was to do. This was just more proposing this to see if the overall idea was fine. And then we can decide how we phrase that.
Sure.
Okay. So shall we move to the deadline issue, or is there anything more to discuss here?
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay. Yeah, so the next issue we had for request idle callback is issue 71 from
71.
71. So the definition of deadline.
Oh, I guess that's not in the agenda.
Yeah, sorry, 83 seems to be in the agenda, but that one's already closed, I think.
Yeah.
That was easy.
Oh,
but
okay.
Yeah, 71 should be.
Okay, so let's add this thing.
Yeah.
Let's add the link.
Yeah, I'm adding I have the link.
Oh, okay. Well, I already did it, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this thing needs to talk like talk about event loop as well, right? And also task sources. I think what most expedient thing to do is to say that anytime there's a task schedule in a task, any of the task sources, then you have to not call idle callback.
We have to what? So we have to.
Well, so if any of the task sources has a task, right, pending task, then we shouldn't be scheduled idle callback at that point, right? We should not be invoking the callback.
Unless it's
This wasn't about invoking. This is about the deadline parameter. When we start an idle period, what the value of that deadline parameter should be.
Yeah, sorry. So what that means is that like, whenever like there is a task schedule in the task, any of the task sources associated with event loop, then we have to say that like deadline like we have. That's the end of the idle, right?
We have. I mean, the point of the deadline is to give a forward-looking prediction. So we need to decide what that deadline is at the start of an idle period, and we can't change it throughout. We can reset it back to 0, but we can't change it during the idle period because it's used as a decision as to when to start the next idle period.
Like, well, I guess then one thing we have to take into account is what are the things the UA could reasonably predict, right? We can't say random stuff like UA have to guess, like, or like use heuristics to estimate whatnot. Like, for example, in WebKit, like, I'm starting to think it is literally impossible to figure out when the next frame would happen.
Okay.
Like, that doesn't seem to be possible.
So, I mean, the point of this prediction is to provide some knowledge to the developer as to what time they might have available. I'm fine with providing some additional kind of semantical invariance of like it is the maximum, it's the minimum of the next timer and the next frame if that's available to the UA and some other stuff. But I think, I mean, in Chrome we are using like our internal task sources to produce this prediction, and that includes things that are not on the spec. So I'd be very much against not having some line there that says, and the deadline can be set to less than the deadline that's spec, like the spec parts, like
Well,
the UA.
Yeah, defining to be less is okay. I mean, the problem with the current specs is that as things stand, it's completely UA defined. It could be anything.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, with this proposal, it still kind of could be anything. Maybe it could be anything below a certain value. Would that be fine with you?
Right?
That would be fine. Okay.
I mean, the problem is right now you can't even test this stuff. Like really, like.
So the max value for the next timer, like lower than the time that the next timer is supposed to fire, seems like a reasonable maximum, even if you don't have predictions related to frames.
Yeah, I mean, but like, what about web audio, which would periodically schedule callback, or like media, right? It doesn't seem right. For example, if you know the length of video, which you're about to finish in next 10 milliseconds, to not know that, not realize that, right? And starts running idle callback.
Yeah, I'm not sure how MQE and WebAudio work in that respect. Aren't they registering for those tasks? I mean, or are you saying just that when those tasks arrive, they are of extremely high priority, and there's no way for you to predict when those tasks get queued?
No, I mean in terms of spec wise, like, don't we need to take those things into account? Like it. Let me put it this way. Like if I were to implement this thing as things stand today, only thing I'm gonna take into account is timer. That's it. Nothing else. Because that's what the spec says.
Yeah. So Ross got cut off from the Hangout. He's trying to rejoin.
Oh, okay.
Oh, here he is.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's happened to my laptop.
Yeah, no worries. So we were discussing what, like, the lack of ability to predict when high priority tasks will get queued by media or audio or network, I guess, is also one. How do, like, Chrome and maybe, I don't know, Mozilla folks, how do you deal with that uncertainty in the implementation?
So I can talk about how Chrome does it. So since it's a forward-looking prediction, we're just looking at tasks that have already been queued with some delayed time to be scheduled. Like the spec of request idle callback means that if there's any task that's queued to run immediately, we're not going to start an idle period because we're the lowest priority task queue. So it's only for every task queue that we have, we look at what's scheduled in the future and we take the minimum of that. And we also take into account our compositor's decision as to when it plans to start drawing the next frame, or when it starts scheduling tasks to draw that next frame for request to animation frame and things like that.
Okay, and then if high priority tasks arrive in the middle of an idle callback, tough. And
yeah, right. I mean, there's already support in the calling the call idle frame callback for kind of bugging out of idle callbacks. Like if you start trying to call a callback and you see there's a higher priority tasks, you can just cancel that and then you'll try again next time. But you can't really, I mean, once the callback is started executing, like you're in user JavaScript land, you can't do anything really about that. And the deadline on the object itself is fixed.
Yeah.
I think we do have the ability, we do have the ability to set the deadline back to 0. So that's the other way. So the user, the callee of the API can keep checking the time remaining, and if it gets down to 0, then it knows, even if that time period was less than the time period it had available, that it knows that there's a higher priority task and it can just bug out.
And Ryosuke, from your perspective, there is no I guess.
Is that spect? I mean,
yes. Yes, it's spec. It's part of the. If you look at the call idle. Trying to find the exact part. So step 1 of section 6.2, the user agent believes it should end the idle period early due to newly scheduled high priority work. Skip to step 4. And then
so I think So then I think that step should explicitly talk about task sources and event loop.
Sure, it could say something like, if any tasks are scheduled for now, I guess.
If the task source, yeah, or if any task sources task being queued.
Yep.
Or you can then add if there is an agent bleeds or whatever, right? That's okay. But that needs to be stated there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can file a bug about that.
There's the same in section 5.3 of the idle deadline interface. Step 4 is if the user agent now has a time critical task pending, set time remaining to 0. So we can probably create a separate algorithm for has a time critical task pending.
Right. Yeah. So that those things needs to be like well defined.
It's still going to need at the end of that, like, or the user agent has some internal high priority task, but it can list all the things that we know about in the spec as well.
Right. I mean, fundamental issue here is that this clause, for example, right now is completely untestable. Right. Like.
Sure.
Like when I read this text, there's nothing that says I need to do anything here. Right. Okay.
So for the actual deadline itself, did you talk about that anymore? Would that be a similar type of change?
So the value itself, we didn't really discuss it more, but
right. So it seems like the only thing that is sort of well defined is the timer right now.
So you have the timer. I'm not sure, Ross, you talked about tasks in the task queues, but the ones that are scheduled to execute later. So that
So I mean, I think we have something like that we need to find the right spec words for. It's like the closest timer in the list of active timers. So,
but what is
all task queues, I guess, all pending task queues.
But what is the task that is supposed to in like future? I don't know of such a task like in a spec land.
That's the problem, right? This is the problem we had last time. All the stuff in the spec land says something like, and run this part of the spec concurrently until X time is reached, or something like that. So there's no good list of pending tasks as far as I know.
Well, the thing is, suppose there was a pending task, but most of the pending tasks will run immediately anyway. So what are the examples? What are a concrete example in, let's say, Chromium or Gecko that is async, but where the user agent to differ if you know like that's in the future and how far in the future? Like I just can't think of anything in the spec that would be the case other than some media related stuff.
Yeah, so media is what I would think of. I don't know though. Like I don't know those parts of the spec well enough. I can imagine the web audio. I'm pretty sure they have some
right. I mean,
callback.
So I think that's the fundamental issue here. Like right now, only thing I can implement is timer, and that's it.
and potentially we could wire in those tasks, but there is no concept in the spec that says this is a task that's supposed to fire at this point in the future.
Right. I mean, let's even forget about like spec, right? Like concretely, like more concretely, I have no idea what these things are. So like yeah, I guess I'm gonna just implement that. Just wait for time and that's it. I mean, that would be our implementation because there's nothing else that's well defined in spec, or there's no way to find them.
I mean-
Beyond well defining, I'm guessing we could both from Chrome and Firefox dig up those cases and outline them, right?
I mean, no, because we didn't implement it that way. As I understand from the last time we had this discussion, I think WebKit fires everything to Grand Central Station, so it doesn't schedule things itself. It doesn't have its own scheduler. I think that's the problem. Both Firefox and Chrome have our own schedulers, and so we know all the tasks that are running on the event loop. And so we can do this. Since WebKit doesn't own its own event loop in some sense, I guess, then I guess you have trouble doing that. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound like a reason not to spec something. But I do get that it's difficult to spec this with the way the current HTML spec is set out.
So
I believe Firefox built a scheduler when they were doing request idle callback.
But I'm guessing that from not from the implementation, but from just observing or maybe gathering data, we could track what tasks get sent to the scheduler with extended timers that enable idle callback.
Well, so hold on. Like, if you, for example, Gecko or like a Blink have such an implementation, can't you just like point out the backprice whenever somebody schedules a task with a certain time and figure it out that way? What code might be doing that?
I mean, it's going to be a lot. I'm not working on this full time anymore, so I
Okay.
don't have time to be able to do this. I mean, we use the scheduler not just for I guess what you would call timers in the WebKit world, if I remember how Blink. So we don't just use it for timers that are in the Blink world. We use it for all the stuff in the renderer side of Chrome that happens to run on the same thread.
Hey, can you clarify something for me?
Sure.
In the Chrome implementation, I think you said previously that there's no good list of pending tasks. Is that what you meant to say?
I meant in the HTML spec.
Okay, but in the Chrome implementation, there is a good list of pending tasks.
I don't think so. I mean, we don't. Well, so I don't know. There is a task queue which contains which we know the pending tasks that are coming up. Yes, they're not categorized by the APIs that are scheduling these things, because in some cases it's not web APIs that are scheduling deferred tasks. Could be things like.
So you have a pending task list, but it is not prioritized.
We have different task lists which are prioritized. Each individual task list is not prioritized. They're
Okay.
And if I understand correctly, they're not categorized, so it would be hard to know at the scheduler who scheduled which component scheduled each individual task.
Sure.
And some of those components can be internal ones and not web exposed ones.
Yeah.
Right?
So, I mean, as an example of the list of the task queues are things like the compositor. I think we have per frame task queues for timers that are on different iframes, so they can be scheduled independently. And the IO queue, that probably doesn't do deleted tasks. But,
Yeah, I mean, so fundamentally, this seems problematic, right? Like the fact that WebKit can't implement this seems to indicate that like we have failed speccing this. So I don't know. I don't know what we would do. Like, or maybe we'll just say just waiting for the timer is good enough.
I think you also want request animation frame. That's quite important with request and idle callback. They can go together.
So maybe you cut off before I said that, but it seems like that may not be possible in our implementation, unfortunately. I have to think about, because the way our API for framework work is that we will talk to coanimation, then coanimation will call us back. We don't know when it will call back. So until callback happens, comes to us, we have no idea when the next frame would happen.
I think we kind of have a similar problem. Like we rely on the browser process to tell us when to draw a frame. But we do have some idea of the frame frequency we're expecting. And we obviously know when the last frame was. And so we use that to estimate when the next frame is. It's obviously not accurate entirely, but as I said, the deadline is kind of meant as a ahead of time prediction. It's not meant to be accurate as to exactly when the next timer will run.
Yeah, I mean, we can probably do something like that. Okay, so, but that would mean though, like, this code is kind of also not quite accurate.
I
mean,
I think that
not
as long as yeah,
it's a prediction, and we can spec it to a reasonable degree, but it's always going to be a heuristic and a prediction. And the other parts of the spec are more the accurate bits, the bits that set the deadline to 0 when you actually have a task and you know for sure that there's a more high priority task now. Those bits I think we should spec more concretely because they do actually matter. But this one, like, it's within a range, but it's a prediction.
So do we have agreement that properly specifying the time where deadline is 0, and then defining the value of deadline to be based on available timers, some prediction of the next frame, and then other tasks that the UA may be aware of? Would that work from, like, Ryosuke, would that work from your perspective?
I think in which case we'll probably just get rid of the last clause about pending internal timers such as timeline deadline to start rendering all the stuff, and just say or any other UA defined task. Right? Like, it's meaningless to talk about audio editing internal tasks when we can't even define what those things are.
Let me see.
So in a clause like 6.1 step 5, it says the user then should choose a deadline to ensure that no time critical tasks should be delayed even to go back for false, blah blah blah. It should be set to the minimum or closest timeout and list of active timers. Set timeout or set the internal. Schedule time runtime for pending animation callbacks via request animation frame. Right? So like, I mean, it's a very wordy way of saying it, but basically we're saying that it should be minimum of either the closest timer, DOM timer that fires, or the next time like request animation call. Like, this is also weird. Like, a next time rendering opportunity happens, probably the better way to say it. Like, I don't know why it specifically goes out. Request animation callback should be really like when a rendering opportunity happens.
I think that's how request animation frame is spec'd anyway, so I think they're equivalent, right? It'd be fine by me.
Makes sense.
Although I think, in the notes we should mention request animation frame because they two do go hand in hand. I'm fine with that, making that non-normative.
Yeah, and maybe also everything else regarding internal timeouts and audio
Yeah.
will
Just get rid of
also
it.
be a note.
Just that there are UA dependent things, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, because if you can't even define it, like why even mention those things?
So to recap, Yoav, could you repeat the 3 things that you had?
So one is list of available timers. The other is request animation frame or the next rendering opportunity, which is a better term for that. And then the third would be a big blob of UA-defined timers or UA-defined predictions that can include everything that's currently in the spec, like internal timeouts, audio processing, or other internal tasks, which the UA deems important. So we can move all that to be a note under the banner of UA-defined tasks.
I think I tried to capture that, but I think what would be nice is maybe after the call, if one of us could summarize, or one of you could summarize in the notes, so we have it captured.
Yeah, I can try to do that, and then Stephen is going to try the transcript, so maybe that will give us a more detailed conversation. And we're at time, so let's just, in terms of action items, Ross, can you take on the specifying the bits that we said that need to be better specified? So the setting the deadline to 0 and yeah, and then I think the language around what the deadline value is seems like I can probably take that on. If
okay. Sounds reasonable.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And yes, and we're at time, so we didn't have time to discuss long tasks and TAO integration with Fetch, which are both exciting topics that we'll have to wait till next time. But I'm super happy that we got to the bottom of this particular issue because it's been dragging for a while. So thanks all, and I will see you all in a week and a half, if not before, or in 2 weeks even. Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
Cheers.
Thanks, folks.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye.